오늘 게스트는 스탠포드 의대 영양연구팀의 달리아 페럴만님인데요. 혹시 어떻게 알게 되셨죠?
제가 지금 스탠포드 의대에서 롱제비티 코스를 듣고 있는데요. 여러 교수님들 제가 섭외를 하고 있습니다. 여러 교수님들 중에서도 영양 쪽으로는 가장 권위 있으신 교수님을 섭외해서 자리에 모시게 되었습니다.
페럴만님은 12년간 스탠포드에서 임상 영양 연구를 해오신 분인데요. 당내 마이크로바이옴, 혈당 반응의 개인차, 체중과 인슐린 저항성의 관계 등 다양한 롱제비티 씬에서 임상 설계를 하시고 직접 연구하신 분이세요.
특히 롱제비티 8040 시리즈에 초대가 이미 되었던 크리스토퍼 가드너, 마이크 슈나이더 교수와도 오랜 기간 함께 연구해왔기 때문에 그리고 논문 인용 횟수도 4,000회가 넘는 때 굉장히 권위 있는 학자이기도 합니다. All set, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hello, Korean audience. I'm speaking to you from California in the United States.
You spent running clinical nutrition trials at Stanford, working with Christopher Gardner, Snyder, and others. So what does precision nutrition actually mean, and why does it matter for longevity?
Okay, so it's a good question to start with. When we talk about diet, we used to think, there's one healthy diet and that applies to everybody. The precision nutrition means that we are actually changing the components a little bit based on a particular person. So based on their clinical markers, like, their cholesterol or how they process glucose or if they have any kidney issues. So everybody has different needs, trying to make the diet the most optimal because when we're giving the body exactly what it needs, that person can digest the foods better, use the foods better. And when all the systems are working well, you have a good immune system, cardiovascular system, metabolism, then the risk of getting sick is lower. What's healthy in general does apply to most everybody. So the personalization is once we have all the good diet, then we can make the details. A diet that is very high in plant components and unprocessed food. I mean, that's healthy for everyone, no matter what. So, we have the basics. And then we can say, but for you, you might need to control the amount of carbohydrates a little more. So there is a very basic, broad, healthy diet. And from then, we can start to personalize it based on each person's needs.
So there's a big branch and the little branches are the customized precision nutrition, right?
Exactly. And I think people love the idea of this is the precise diet for me because the general healthy diet is kind of boring. It's like, okay, it's not as exciting as saying, oh, I have this design diet. But yeah, we're all humans and we have, shared physiology.
The things that you mentioned, like low fat, low carb, plant-based, any other things, no legumes, that was kind of a very hot topic among past maybe decades. So how did it feel? Like you're in the middle of that study. Can you feel that?
Yeah, it's super exciting to be studying, what everyone's wondering about. Low carb or low fat diet, which one is better? Or the keto diet versus Mediterranean diet. So all of those contentions, it's kind of fun to be studying that. What's interesting is that when you're doing the study, you realize that it's not so black and white. And that's why it's so hard then to explain and to go out in the public and say, well, this is what we found, because people want to say, I want to hear a winner. Which diet won? And you go, well, there's no real winner because there's nuances. I'll give you an example. In the low carb versus the low fat diet, this was a weight loss. What we found is that either one would work, but what's more important is the quality of the diet. So you can have a very high quality low carb diet. So you're eating lean meats and eggs, lots of vegetables, versus a low carb diet that's a fatty piece of meat or sausage or bacon. Both are low carb, but we saw that the high quality low carb actually achieved more weight loss than the other, even at equal amounts of carbs. So it ended up being a diet quality study. In the end, there was no big difference between low fat and low carb, and there was a huge difference when we divided it by quality. Study with plant-based meats. I don't know if you have those in Korea. So a diet that uses that versus a diet that uses real meat. This was not parallel, this was crossover. What does that mean? You do one, let's say the meat, the real meat, and when you're done with that, you do the other. You do the plant-based. And another person maybe will start with a plant-based and then do the meat. So the randomization is in the order, but everyone does both. And what we found is that the order mattered. That was not part of the, question at all. The participants started with a plant-based meat and then did the meat. The meat didn't have such a bad impact as when they did it the other way around. So when they started with the meat and then went with the plant food, the meat had a more adverse event. So when you're priming your body with these plant components, when you eat meat, you have different impacts. So it's like, wow, that's not what we were asking, but that's what we found. That's what happens in studies. You set it up to answer some questions, and then it gets like, wait, but that's not the way it works. And of course, when you finish a study, you have 7 more questions you want to answer. So you're like, okay, how do we now answer this? Like, what happened in the body when you eat these plant components that protected you from the impact of eating meat? So there's always new questions.
You look more excited when research brings research.
I know, I love that.
Well, the basic thing is that order matters, food metrics matters. There's so many things, right? But the question is, why do same foods have different response among people? What is the drive?
What's the drive? Okay, so there's a few things that we can measure. One very easy to measure is blood sugars. There's these devices that are the continuous glucose monitors. So we can see a graph of what the blood sugars are doing.
I've done it.
And I'm sure many of your listeners have tried it or have heard about it. So you put the device on, it's not painful, it's very easy, you forget you have it, and you get all this amazing data. We fed them the same things. For example, a set amount of rice, and see what happens. Did you all respond the same to the rice? I mean, a very simple food. It's not even a combination. It's just rice. Some people went, woo, super high and came back down. Some people, not so much. Some people went very high and immediately came down. And some people came high, not too high, but it just maintained, above baseline for a long time. So very different reactions to the same food. What is causing that difference, at least for blood sugars? Blood sugar is controlled by so many different organs. Pancreas secreting the insulin. Some people's pancreas don't secrete as efficiently as others. Liver that's stopping the production of glucose, because liver produces sugars when you're not eating, because we have to maintain a certain amount of sugar in the blood constantly, whether you eat or not. So if you're not eating, your liver helps by maintaining blood sugars. So some people, their liver doesn't stop and it continues making sugars. Even when you eat, it's still producing. Other people, the insulin is there, it's in the right amount, but it doesn't open up the gates of the cells. So the sugar doesn't have anywhere to go and it accumulates in the blood. So that's called insulin resistance. There's the incretin hormones that are hormones that we secrete in the intestine. Part of their job is to tell the pancreas, sugar is coming, get ready to secrete insulin. So for some people, those hormones are not doing the job right. Those defects can be different between people, and that's why eating rice might affect a person very different than another. Another example could be, we did a study where we fed people a high fiber diet to see if it helps to increase the diversity of the microbiome. And we think, okay, you're feeding the microbes more fiber, which is the main food for the microbes, more will grow, will get diversity, and it's all good. We also see it's correlating with lower inflammatory levels. What we ended up seeing is that some people did really well with that. We see an increase in diversity, lowering in inflammation. Other people not. Other people, nothing happened. Or in a few, we actually saw I don't want to say adverse event, but yeah, inflammation went a little bit high. The high fiber diet did not work for them. Why? Reason is in those people, they started out the study with a lower diversity. When they were eating all this extra fiber, there was no one to eat it. So it was just wasted. The baseline microbiome is important to understand how to feed it.
You mentioned about the gut microbiome. I know it's a huge another story, but what catch my mind as a Korean, during the lecture, there was a mention about like kimchi. It also helps improve the gut microbiome. So you mentioned that having a good starting point of a microbiome is important. Can you tell me a little bit more about how to get a good standard or a starting point of microbiome? Is kimchi or other fermented food helps really?
Okay, so we've been trying to study so much how to improve the microbiome in people, and it's hard. It's harder than we think. The first question is, what is a healthy microbiome? Which we don't even have the answer to that. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Let's say you are very healthy and I'm very healthy. Hopefully that's true. And if I compare your microbiome to mine, it'll be extremely different. How do I define a healthy microbiome? Because it might be different for you and me. It's kind of a combination of your physiology. So we don't really know what's a healthy microbiome. We're starting to understand that there's the core that is probably healthy for all of us. And then there's all these different species. I don't know. Are they healthy for me or not? Because the microbiome is a whole ecosystem. There's many different ecosystems that are healthy, right? You have the rainforest and you have the mountain ecosystem and the desert ecosystem, and they're all healthy in themselves. They work in that environment. If, let's say, I wipe my microbiome, I somehow implant yours in my body, it might not survive very well because your diet and my diet are different. So I'm feeding it something that they're not used to, and it won't work. So the diet, the physiology has to match the microbiome. How do we improve the microbiome? So we have some tenets, like we want a microbiome that's very diverse, that has a lot of different species, because that means that microbiome is very agile and it can prevent from other pathogenic microbes from growing, and it has a lot of different metabolic capacities. So it gives us a lot of resiliency. That's one of the things we want to see. We want a good ratio of the different groups of bacteria, and obviously we don't want a lot of the pathogenic bacteria. So how do we improve in those, at least in those at that level? We want more diversity and
The ratio.
and good ratios and all of that. How do we do that? One thing is that if we start at the very beginning, when the microbiome gets formed, which is in infancy, when the babies are born, that's a very important time, because once that microbiome is set, it's a little harder to change it. You can imagine you plant seeds in a big forest. The seeds grow and establish, and you get this system, and you go, oh, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted more pines and less spruce. Well, but then you should have planted differently. Essentially, what happens with a developing microbiome in babies, you're basically planting the seeds of what's to come. And then once the microbiome is developed, yes, you can change it, but it's hard. As you can imagine, changing a whole forest. It's like, okay, it's doable, but it's a lot of work. So we do put a lot of emphasis on those first few years of life. But let's assume, none of us have control of that. We're, if you're an adult, okay, I'm here now. So what? Doomed? No, we can still help a little. So we need to start to build it, in a different way. And that's where kimchi and other fermented foods come in, because you're eating different microbes. and you're eating metabolites that these microbes produce. They produce acetic acid, lactic acid, butyric acid. They produce all these different metabolites and many, many others. You're eating those microbes, and you're eating those metabolites that were produced by the microbes. So when you're eating kimchi, you're eating the kimchi microbes and the products of the microbes that fermented the cabbage. With all the other spices, you put the kojugaru, or how do you pronounce it?
That's actually very good pronunciation.
I said it right.
I'm surprised.
So that has a lot of polyphenol, which are super healthy. And so you're eating all these amazing concoction, and it's feeding your own microbes. You're adding, the microbes that you're eating, I don't know if they survive or not, but as they're going through the system, they're doing a lot of good things, including talking to the immune system. So if I take a sample of your intestine and I'm looking for the kimchi microbes, I might not find them because they don't like my intestine. They like cabbage. I won't find them, but I'll find others that like my intestine that were fed, that were produced by the kimchi microbes. It's not direct, but it's super helpful. The same with eating yogurt or eating kefir or sauerkraut or fermented other vegetables, pickles or beets or anything else. You're eating the microbes, you're eating the metabolites. Both microbes and metabolites are super helpful to help increase the diversity.
I felt that it's like making friends, like you introduce other multicultural friends to each other, which helps a lot. Even though you don't be a friend with them, but you get the communication skill. It's just like that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes. If we learn from each other and we provide things that, oh, wow, I had no idea. We all benefit, absolutely.
One more thing that I was impressed about that lecture week, the food metrics, even you eat same like 10 almonds, if you eat as a whole and versus into like grinded butter, what exactly is food metrics is and what kind of change does it have?
I'm very happy you're asking about it because, it's very interesting to think that if I eat almonds or I eat almond butter, it's not the same. I put the exact same amount of almond, I just blended them. Why is that so different? And it's different because in the almonds themselves, before we blend them, the nutrients, the fat molecules and the fiber is packaged in a very certain way. And when we eat it, first of all, you have to chew it. The almond butter, you don't chew. It's a different food. You liberate some of those components very differently. So we end up swallowing small pieces of almond instead of blended almond. So the access of the fat, the length of the fibers are exposed in a very different way in our intestinal tract. And our enzymes, for example, they can extract a lot of those nutrients from the almond butter, and they can't from the chewed almond because it's much harder for the enzymes to get into those pieces. So you end up getting a lot more calories from the almond butter than the whole almonds, just because you can't extract everything from the chewed almond. You have different speed of digestion and different degree of digestion, different speed of how fast it gets into your bloodstream. And it's all because of how it's presented to the intestinal. It might be good, it might be bad, depending on what your goal is. If your goal is, for example, when nutritionists are designing food source for children in areas of the world where there's a lot of malnutrition and the kids are just not gaining enough weight, they don't have enough calories. One of the main components of the little pouches that they give the kids is peanut butter. It's because it's so easy to access the calories from there. We could have given them peanuts, but no, peanut butter. For someone just normal exercise, I would stay with the least processed food. So it has the more complex matrix. If I'm eating grains, I want the grains, like the whole grain. Here in California, we have a lot of Korean supermarkets, and I love going through them. And I've seen a lot of very different grains, are not not typically eaten in the US, and different types of beans and legumes.
I hope you come to Korea someday. We have lots of legumes and whole foods here.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to, yes.
Korea is actually one of the fastest aging societies in the world. What nutrition priorities would you recommend for our subscribers? We are aging rapidly, but also increasing health conscious. What are the best recommendation for us?
Increase in health span, not just lifespan, is in terms of diet, there's a few things that are very important. One is a lot of plant components, because the plant foods have a lot of components that we humans, we are animals, we don't make. And we rely on the plant to provide it for us. We call the phenolic compounds, for example, or the phytochemicals, which are strong antioxidants, strong anti-inflammatory. We can't make them. We need it from the plant. So a high proportion of plant food is important and very diverse. So not just, okay, I'm just gonna eat rice and broccoli, but green and red and orange and all the different types of vegetables. So that way you're feeding your body with all those components that will help maintain the oxidation levels low, inflammation levels low. The other thing is low alcohol. I know people don't like hearing that, but alcohol is not very healthy for the cardiovascular system, for the microbiome, for the oxidation. Low in processed foods, as we were talking about.
Do you have a longevity routine that you're trying to keep yourself?
Consciously look at labels when I'm buying food. And the other thing is I do try to make the food that's good for me enjoyable. So make sure that the food that I'm eating is delicious, not just, okay, it's healthy, it's fine. And I've heard it must be healthy. It tastes healthy, meaning it's not tasty. It's like, no, it can be both. It can definitely be both healthy and tasty. And I really make a lot of effort to achieve that, to make food that's healthy and tasty so that I'm craving it, getting, the joy of eating, which is important too. But yeah, of course, aside of diet, there's many other things. The context of your meal. If I'm eating something super, super healthy, but I'm eating it in a rush and I'm like, okay, I have 2 minutes because my next meeting is happening and I will digest that food very differently. And if I'm paying attention and slowing down and chewing it, so how you eat the food is important. And if I'm sitting with friends and talking and enjoying, that also makes different types of hormone extracting nutrients differently. So there's so many variables that are, when are you eating, what time of day, how much, with whom, how long. It's not just what, it's the whole package.
That's very nice to end our conversation, actually. Be happy what you do. Don't get stressed what you eat.
Exactly. Share it with others. Take your time. Enjoy the food. Yeah.